Did you know that the enemy will do whatever it takes to silence your voice? He will do whatever he has to do to shut you up. And one of the biggest tactics that he uses is rejection. Rejection has a way of whispering things in our ear and making us feel like we're not enough. It has a way of making us hide away and not want to be seen. It quiets our voice. It silences us. That's why the enemy uses that tactic, because he wants to keep us quiet. He wants to keep us from walking in the calling that God has placed on our lives. And I will admit to you that for years, I let rejection take root inside of me, and I let it keep me from believing in who God says that I am. I let it keep me from walking in the calling on my life. And I want more for you. I want you to be able to stand here today and say, today is the day that I stopped letting rejection steal my voice. I will never allow the enemy to stop me from stepping into what God has called me to do. Now, there are some hot topics going around right now about women and what women should do or shouldn't do or what they're allowed to be called. And I take it a little personal because I'm a pastor and I'm a woman. And there are a lot of voices out there that would tell me I'm not allowed to be, and that somewhere I must have got it wrong. But I want to share with you something that God taught me. So let me share with you a piece of my testimony and what God taught me recently. A woman called by God does not need permission from a man to obey him. For years, I thought that I needed to defend my calling. What I eventually learned was that God had never asked me to win the argument. He had only called me to be faithful. Growing up, most little girls played house. They dreamed of weddings and babies and what they wanted to be when they grew up. But at my house, we played church. My big brother would step behind the armchair, pretending it was a pulpit, and open the service. And then he would call me up, Sister Mandy, come and lead us in a song. And I would grab my borrowed hymnal from church and walk up front, and I would lead us in one of my favorites, Unclouded Day. And then my brother would step back behind the pulpit, and he would preach, usually a message about a woman's place. And I can clearly remember, even all these years later, sitting there thinking, why can't I preach? It wasn't out of anger or rebellion. I wasn't trying to challenge authority. I was just a little girl who loved Jesus. I loved his church, and I couldn't understand why God would give me a voice if he never intended for me to use it. And as the years went by, that question never left me. Instead, it grew right alongside with the call that God was placing on my life. And as a teenager, I taught classes at church and spoke at events. I was even the Bible club president on campus. I was given opportunities to speak at youth camp. God was already opening doors for me to teach, to encourage, to lead. The call to ministry became more evident over my life, not just to me, but to others around me. And so as graduation approached, I made the decision to enroll in Bible college, and I chose pastoral leadership as my major. I was excited and I was eager to learn, and I was ready to devote my life to serving God and go wherever he would send me. What I wasn't prepared for was how quickly I would discover that not everyone agreed on what God could do with a woman. Day one, New Testament survey, and we were all introducing ourselves. And we stood up and we shared our major. And I proudly announced that I was pursuing a degree in pastoral leadership. I didn't know it at that moment, but that declaration had placed a target on my back. For the rest of the semester, my professor found opportunities to remind me that he believed women were not called to preach. Some comments were subtle, and others were more pointed and public. More than once, I left class in tears. And I sat through every lecture feeling like the spotlight was on me. The excitement that I had had about Bible school started to turn into frustration and self-doubt. The part that surprised me the most, though, was that most of all the girls in the class agreed, and they joined in. But one day, I pushed back. I pointed out that if we were going to apply scripture literally while ignoring context, then we should be consistent. And if I was to remain silent and not preach, that all the other girls needed to cover their heads, remove their jewelry, and throw away their makeup. That didn't go over well. And, to be honest, I didn't feel much better about it either. That was the day I started to feel the need to defend the calling on my life. Up until that moment, I had simply believed that God was leading me. I wasn't trying to prove a point. I just wanted to follow Jesus. But something changed in that classroom that day. I took my eyes off the one who mattered. I suddenly felt the need for evidence so that I could justify what I once had just believed. That's what the fear of man does to us. It shifts our focus from obedience to approval. We stop asking, what has God said? And start asking, how can I make everyone else agree? So I studied. I read books. I listened to sermons. I dug into commentaries. I spent years formulating my argument for and against those who were against women in ministry. I wanted to be prepared for every single debate and every objection. I was building the defense that I thought I needed. What I didn't know then was that I didn't need one. God was building a foundation inside of me. And years later, I finally understood something that no lecture or commentary could ever teach me. God never expected me to defend my calling. He just wanted me to walk in it. Deborah didn't defend her calling. She led. Priscilla didn't defend her calling. She taught. They simply walked in what God had called them to do. The time that I spent studying wasn't a waste, though. Even though it wasn't preparation to win an argument, it was still preparing me to walk in the confidence that I would need. God never needed me to convince everyone else. He was teaching me to believe it for myself. And once you become confident in what God has spoken to you and over you, the need to constantly defend it goes away. One day I will stand before God. And on that day, I do not believe that He will ask whether I won every argument. I do believe that He will ask if I was faithful. Proverbs 29:25 says that the fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. The fear of man is just that. It is a trap to keep us from doing what God has called us to do. But the fear of God sets you free, and it keeps your focus on the one who truly matters, Him. That little girl that once sat there and wondered, why can't I preach? She finally found her answer. If God called her to, she could. Because the call of God never depended on the approval of man. And the older I get, the less interested I am in defending my calling, and the more interested I am in just obeying it, just walking in it. A woman called to preach does not need to defend the call of God on her life. She simply needs to trust the one who called her and keep walking. The call is not sustained by the approval of man. It is sustained only by the voice of God. I stopped defending the call of God on my life. God never called me to do it. And the call on your life may not be the same as mine. But can I tell you something? God never asked you to defend it. He never asked you to prove it to anybody else. He just asked you to walk in it, to trust Him, and to stay faithful to what He has called you to do. Stop defending what God has called you to do and just do it. Just walk in it. And while you're at it, don't apologize either. Just keep your eyes on the one who matters. He is the only one who matters. His voice is the only voice that matters. You do not need permission to walk in the calling that God has placed on your life, even if you're a woman called to preach.